interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
This is not a drill. This is an emergency.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Headline: Assange faces 170 years in prison as U.S. adds charges under Espionage Act. This is an article in on the libertarianinstitute.org written by Jason Ditz, where he discusses the new indictment of Julian Assange. Unfortunately, the indictment was signed and released the day after I recorded with John Kiriakou, so we did not get into this situation and the new events. But I've since then I've heard Mr. Kiriakou on Unity for J, which is a great show. Every Friday they do a vigil for Julian Assange. You have Joe Loria, Elizabeth Leah Voss, and they have all kinds of special guests. They've had Scott Horton on, Daniel Ellsberg, William Binney, John Kiriakou. The list goes on of just great voices they've had speaking out in favor of Julian Assange. So what occurred was we always suspected, and in the last episode I did about Assange, we talked about the idea that excuse me, that Assange would be possibly facing more charges, and these charges would add up to a direct threat to the First Amendment and journalism within the United States. So I'm going to skip through all the minute details, and I'm going to get right to the counts. There's 18 separate counts of charges, equaling about 170 years in prison. And so we're going to go through these counts one by one and see if any of them are legitimate, which I'm sure you can guess by now. I haven't entered this podcast completely blind. I know what we're about to see and what we're about to read. So, without further ado, let's get into the charges of the latest indictment on Julian Assange. Between in or about November 2009 and continuing until at least September 2011, in an offense begun and committed outside of the jurisdiction of any particular state or district of the United States, the defendant, who will be first brought to the Eastern District of Virginia, knowingly and unlawfully conspired with other conspirators, known and unknown to the grand jury, to commit the following offenses against the United States. Okay, when they say knowingly and unlawfully, they are They said knowingly and unlawfully conspired with other co-conspirators. They're discussing, they're talking about Chelsea Manning. They're talking about Julian Assange encouraging Chelsea Manning to get more information about the illegal wars and the illegal acts that the United States was taking in the war in Iraq. So their entire defense base is based around the idea that Julian Assange conspired with Chelsea Manning, whether asked Chelsea Manning, demanded of Chelsea Manning, or requested of Chelsea Manning, that there were more documents released into his care so that he could publicize these documents. They don't mention at all that these documents revealed war crimes, that they revealed that the United States had been lying to the citizens of the country. It doesn't reveal these things. What they're interested in is in finding a way, a catch-22, in which they can say, well, Julian Assange conspired. He committed conspiracy. I think we just, I mean, for lack of a better term, did he possibly collude with Chelsea Manning? Is that what we're talking about? Did Julian Assange possibly collude with Chelsea Manning? So, here are the, was it four points in which Julian Assange conspired with Chelsea Manning to obtain documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense for the purpose of obtaining information respecting the national defense, namely detainee assessment briefs related to detainees who were held at Guantanamo Bay, U.S. State Department cables, and Iraq rules of engagement files classified up to the secret level, and with reason to believe that the information was to be used to the injury of the United States or the advantage of any foreign nation in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 793B. Okay, but where does Title 18 United States Code Section 793B, how does it line up with the Constitution of the United States? Does this in any way, shape, or form give permission to violate the Constitution of the United States? Because if I remember correctly, what Julian Assange was actually revealing in the State Department cables and in the Guantanamo Bay papers were actually unconstitutional acts by the United States government. And he and Chelsea Manning felt like the public ought to know. Who's in charge here? Is the government in charge, or are the people in charge? Is it a government for and by the people, or is it a government over the people? What is it? What are we dealing with here? Number 2, to receive and obtain documents, writings, and notes with the national defense, namely, hold on, my phone got blurry on me. Okay, namely detainee assessment briefs related to detainees who were held at Guantanamo Bay, U.S. State Department cables, Iraq rules of engagement files, and information stored on the secret Internet Protocol Network classified up to the secret level for the purpose of obtaining information respecting the national defense and embarrassing the United States. That's what it should say. It should say, this embarrassed us. He published information that was embarrassing to the United States. But number 3, because none of these things say anything different other than we say he can't do this, but he did it anyway. But we say stomp our feet, throw a tantrum. We said it's our way or the highway, buddy. Number 3, to willfully communicate documents relating to the national defense, namely detainee assessment briefs related to detainees who were held at Guantanamo Bay, U.S. State Department cables, Iraq rules of engagement files, and documents containing the names of individuals in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere around the world who risked their safety and freedom by providing information to the United States and our allies, which were classified up to the secret level. Okay. So, here's one of those places where I kind of differ on Assange. All right. So what Assange did was he released the names, locations, and the activities of informants for the United States government. I don't necessarily agree with that, but all he did was publish these names, locations, and activities of these informants. He didn't create them. He wasn't out there sending them to specific enemy targets and saying, you need to watch out for these people. All he did was publish them. Whereas I don't think it was smart to publish them. It's not illegal. Well, it's illegal under the United States Code 18, but it's not immoral. He just put names out there. He named names. Okay? You can disagree with him and still say, well, I don't like the way he handled that. I don't think that he handled that correctly, but I don't think he should spend 170 years in prison for publishing information for the public to see. So you're allowed to hold both opinions at the same time. There's no reason that you can't hold both opinions at the same time. Number 4, to willfully... back to number 3 real quick. Just as a refresher and a reminder, nobody ever was injured or lost their life because of anything that WikiLeaks published. Nobody. There's never been any evidence to show that anything that WikiLeaks published was life-threatening any way, shape, or form. So the fact of the matter is, even if you disagree with them releasing names and locations, dates, activities, and all these things, it did no harm. No harm came of it. So, no victim, no crime. Number 4, to willfully communicate documents relating to the national defense, namely for Manning to communicate to Assange the detainee assessment briefs related to detainees who were held at Guantanamo Bay, U.S. State Department cables and Iraq rules of engagement files classified up to the secret level, and for Assange to communicate documents classified up to the secret level containing the names of individuals in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere around the world who risked their safety and freedom by providing information to the United States and our allies to the public from persons in unauthorized possession of such documents to persons not entitled to receive in variation of Title 18. We're the persons not entitled to receive the information. You do realize that, right? He didn't. It's not like Julian Assange turned around and gave the information to the State Department. He didn't hand the information off to the President of the United States. He gave it to us. He gave us the information. So we're the ones without the authority. Not to mention that they restated the conspiracy, the co-conspiracy theory. Yeah, I'll use that CIA term, conspiracy theory, back against them. They restated that just to add more countenance to the charges, which I think is ridiculous. So let's go on to count two. Count two. Between in or about 2009 and in or about May 2010, in an offense begun and committed outside of the jurisdiction of any particular state or district of the United States, the defendant, who will be first brought to the Eastern District of Virginia, and others unknown to the grand jury. We don't know where they're taking them. They're going to take him somewhere. They're going to take him somewhere bad. They're going to take him somewhere vicious. They're going to take him somewhere that does not treat him well and does not give a shit about human rights whatsoever. But they're going to take him somewhere unknown to the grand jury. Knowingly and unlawfully obtained, incited, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning to obtain documents. Again, we're restating this. He caused Manning to obtain the documents. Did he cause it? He caused it, right? How did he cause that? Was he holding a gun to Manning's head saying, "You better do this"? Did Manning trip over Julian Assange and fall into the documents? Well, how actually did he cause this? Let's not get retarded here. How did he cause it? He didn't cause anything. He accepted documents from a leak and published them. Not to mention, the leak was extremely legitimate, releasing information that the American people have a right to know. Count three. Between in or about, blah, 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 blah. We're going to get past that. He's going to be brought to an unknown location, knowingly and unlawfully obtained and aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning to obtain documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense for the purpose of obtaining information. Again, he caused it. And again, you're restating something you stated in count one. Count four. He knowingly and unlawfully obtained and aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning to obtain documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense for the purpose of obtaining information respecting the national defense, namely Iraq rules of engagement files classified up to the secret level. We're just saying the same things over and over again and making it look like it's much worse than it ever has been before. And this guy is the biggest threat to American security, and we're all going to die if Julian Assange continues to walk free. Count five. Julian Assange knowingly and unlawfully attempted to receive and obtain documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense, namely information stored on the secret Internet Protocol Network classified up to the secret level. Reason to believe at the time it attempted to receive and obtain them, that such materials would be obtained, taken, made, and disposed of by person contrary to the provision of Chapter 37 of Title 18 of the United States Code. Again, he's receiving documents. Tell me one journalist that gets tips. Tell me one. Name one journalist that receives tips that doesn't receive documents. Is there any journalist out there that doesn't require somebody to procure documents for them? Isn't that what journalists do? They take documents that are given to them, leaked to them, information that they receive, whether that information is quote unquote legal or not, and they publish this information. I mean, that's what he's being charged with. He's being charged with journalism. You'll see this running through the thread, through every count. Count 6, Julian Assange. Knowingly and unlawfully received and obtained documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense, namely detainee assessment briefs classified up to the secret level. Count 7, Julian Assange, knowingly and unlawfully received and obtained documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense, namely U.S. Department of State cables, classified up to the secret level. Count 8, Julian Assange, knowingly and unlawfully received and obtained documents, writings, and notes connected with the national defense, namely Iraq Rules of Engagement files, classified up to the secret level. Count 9, Julian Assange, knowingly and willfully. I'm sorry. This one changes. I apologize. Count 9, Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, produced, and willfully caused Manning, who had lawful possession. So Manning got arrested, put in prison for 7 years, tortured for 7 years, but didn't do anything unlawful, had lawful possession of access to and control over documents relating to national defense, namely detainee amendment briefs classified up to the secret level. Count 10, Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, produced, and willfully caused Manning, who had lawful possession of access to and control over documents related to the national defense, namely U.S. Department of State cables. Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning. I love that word, caused. If Julian Assange was the cause, then the imprisonment was the effect? Is that what we're doing? Who had lawful possession of, access to, and control over documents relating to the national defense, namely Iraq Rules of Engagement. Count 12, Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning, who had unauthorized possession of, access to, and control of documents relating to the national defense, namely detainee assessment briefs classified up to the secret level. That looks like that's the first actual crime, is unauthorized possession of. Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning, who had unauthorized possession of, access to, and control over documents relating to the national defense, namely U.S. Department of State cables. Yada yada. 14, Julian Assange, aided, abetted, counseled, induced, procured, and willfully caused Manning. Count 15, Julian Assange, having unauthorized possession of, access to, and control over documents relating to national defense, willfully and unlawfully caused and attempted to cause such materials to be communicated, delivered, and transmitted to persons entitled to receive them. Assange, having authorized possession of significant activity reports classified up to the secret level from the Afghanistan war, containing the names of individuals who risked their safety and freedom by providing information to the United States and our allies. Communicated the documents containing names of these sources to all the world by publishing them on the internet. So there you go. Count 15. He's in trouble for publishing. Count 16. Julian Assange, having unauthorized possession of, access to, and control over documents relating to the national defense, willfully and unlawfully caused and attempted to cause such materials to be communicated, delivered, and transmitted to persons not entitled to receive them. Again, publishing. Count 17. Julian Assange having unauthorized possession of, access to, and control over documents relating to the national defense, willfully and unwillfully caused and attempted to cause such materials to be communicated, delivered, and transmitted to persons not entitled to receive them. Oh, he published them for the public to see. Count 18. Here it gets a little bit more in depth. There's a little bit more involved here. Julian Assange did knowingly and unlawfully conspire with others known and unknown to the grand jury to commit offenses against the United States, to wit, to knowingly access a computer without authorization and exceeding authorized access to obtain information that has been determined by the United States government pursuant to an executive order and statute to require protection against unauthorized disclosure for reasons of national defense and foreign relations, namely documents relating to the national defense classified up to the secret level, with reason to believe that such information to obtain could be used to the injury of the United States and the advantage of the foreign nations, and to willfully communicate, deliver, and cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted the same to any person not, I got to zoom in, hold on 1 second, entitled to receive it, and willfully retain the same and fail to deliver it to the officer or employer entitled to receive it, and to intentionally access a computer without authorization and exceeding authorized access to obtain information from a department agency of the United States in furtherance of a criminal act in violation of the laws of the United States, that is a violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 641, 793C, and 793E. And then it gets into what they consider the purpose and objective. Let me see what they say as purpose here. I don't think I read this earlier. The primary purpose of the conspiracy was to facilitate Manning's acquisition and transmission of classified information related to the national defense of the United States so that WikiLeaks could publicly disseminate the information on its website. Oh, so they didn't mention at all that it might have something to do with informing the public. Like, that's not important at all to these fellas here. They don't care if the public knows. And this is what it really boils down to. What Julian Assange did is he received information and he published it. And he received this information and he checked this information. He made sure the information was accurate and he published it. He published factual, accurate information. Never once in the history of WikiLeaks that I'm aware of, that anybody I know is aware of, have they ever had to pull back documents, to retract statements. They've always gone forward, and nothing has ever been proven false or even leading somebody in the wrong direction. WikiLeaks has 100% satisfaction guaranteed rate for their customers. They tell you the truth. And there are Democrats out there that are, well, they hacked the DNC. Apparently it's not a crime. These things were never brought up. Number one, you can't prove they hacked the DNC. And William Binney's done a lot of good work showing that it probably was not a hack. And more than likely, it was pulled off with a USB drive in person on the server. But number two, nobody has ever proved that Julian Assange had anything to do with the DNC leaks other than publishing emails. And these aren't supposed to be public information. These people are acting on our behest. These people are supposed to be acting as representatives of us. This is absolutely our business. Absolutely. So that we know that if there's a helicopter full of military men shooting reporters in the middle of the street, we're able to hold those people accountable. And it strikes me odd in today's society. It's really odd to me. And it's something I've been thinking about here lately. You have a society of grown men worshiping at the feet of another man. You're a grown ass man. Handle your fucking business. What the hell are you doing bowing down before the Lord Almighty Trump or Obama or any of these fucking people? You're a grown ass man. Act like it. There's absolutely no way in the world you would get me to defend somebody who is doing things that I absolutely despise, that just completely go against every single principle for which I stand for. That is the most ridiculous argument. But my Trump, Obama, who gives a fuck, man? Like, really? You've sold your self-respect in order to be identified with this person. It's another person. Like, get that through your head. They're a person. They're not a deity. It's a person. So no, like, it absolutely is not a necessity to stay on one team or the other. As far as I'm concerned, the only team that should even be contemplated is Team Liberty. And if we can work together and accomplish it, then so be it. And that's great. And that's wonderful. And that's what we should all be striving for. But the fact of the matter is there's no guarantees. And by sitting on the sidelines and watching Assange getting his head handed to him, all most people are doing is participating by silence in the destruction of the First Amendment, in the destruction of anything that is resembling journalism. How long before they shut up somebody like me? I know I'm not like at the top of their list. I'm not even popular. Nobody knows who I am. But I know people that people know who they are. What if they shut down Scott Horton? What if they shut down Tom Woods? How long is it before they start shutting down voices that are speaking truth to power? And do you not care because, oh, well, Julian Assange isn't an American? But shouldn't he be protected by not being in America's jurisdiction? Do you not care because he's less of a person because he's less of an American? Like, how does that even make sense? What does it matter what his country of origin is? He's a man doing a job. He's publishing material. He sees himself as the people's intelligence agency. The people, not the government. He wants nothing to do with the government. He wants to make sure that you're getting the information. If people like this are locked up, if people like this are silenced, who's going to get you the information that you need to make informed decisions? Are we just going to be okay with the state creating the narrative? Or are we going to actually stand up for what is freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and let those that we may disagree with speak despite our disagreement? The Constitution was never meant to reel in individuals. The Constitution's in place to reel in government. And the government has figured out that the people don't care about the Constitution. Therefore, they don't have to care about the Constitution. I heard it said a while back that the Madisonian view was that if it's not expressly allowed by the Constitution, then the government shall not do it. But ever since Woodrow Wilson, if it's not expressly prohibited by the Constitution, then it is perfectly fine if the federal government does it, as long as it has a majority of the people behind it. That's not what this is, or was ever meant to be. And no matter how you feel about the Constitution, I have my problems with it. The fact of the matter is that ever since the coup that overthrew the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution is the law of the land. And even the government, actually, especially the government, is supposed to abide by the Constitution. The Constitution, the Articles of Confederation as well, were written in order to limit the powers of the government, to restrain government, not the people. I don't think I have much more to get into tonight. I actually was able to make it home to record this, luckily, because I had some recording problems. But Monday's episode's not going to be recorded from the house. It's going to be recorded from the road. Next Thursday's episode will also be from the road. And I will be home once again on June the 8th. But until then, man, stand up. Be loud. Don't let them silence you. This is our fight. This is an information revolution. And it's up to us to get the truth out. Light.
You take on the intelligence community. They have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. We had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment. You take on the intelligence community. They have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. We had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.